Imagine your phone is mid-call on a train, streaming a map, holding a live data path through half a dozen network checkpoints. Now imagine the home subscriber system, the authority that knows who you are, decides that path must end. Not because you tapped disconnect, because the network itself decided the session has to go. How do you close one live mobile session safely so every checkpoint learns about it? And nothing is left hanging. No ghost bearer, no stale policy rule, no half open tunnel eating resources. That is the puzzle behind the HSS initiated detach request procedure. It is not a single off switch, it is a coordinated teardown across separate network roles, lane by lane. Before any message flies, picture the route as swim lanes, separate responsibilities standing side by side. On one side sits the UE, your device. Next to it, the access and core network elements that actually carry your traffic. Think of the MME as the mobility controller, plus the gateways that hold the ESS1 and ESS5 bearers, the real data pipes. Farther along sits the HSS, the home subscriber server, the subscriber database and authority. Then policy, the PCRF, and the SPR that stores subscription policy. Active lines connect them: an ESS1 bearer toward the radio side, an ESS5 bearer deeper in the core, GTP control connections, sometimes an FMC connection. While those lines are lit, the session is alive. Our job in this procedure is to turn them off in the right order, with acknowledgments so the whole route collapses cleanly. Why would the HSS start a detach at all? Picture a few real world moments. A subscription is withdrawn, an operator administratively disables a user after fraud detection, a profile change invalidates the current registration. In each case, the truth lives first in the home subscriber database, not in the handset the user is holding. If only the phone could end sessions, the network would be stuck waiting for a device that may be offline, roaming, or adversarial. So the architecture gives the HSS a voice. Cancel location request is that voice arriving at the MME. Notice the design choice. Authority to cancel is centralized where subscription truth lives. Execution is delegated to the node that currently serves the user. That split is why a swim lane is the right picture. One decision, many hands. Here is the first answer to the puzzle. The detach is HSS initiated. So the first arrow does not come from the phone. It comes from the subscriber database side. The HSS sends a cancel location request, often shortened to CLR, toward the MME. Cancel location sounds dramatic, as if the user vanishes instantly. That is the misconception to drop right now. CLR is an announcement, not a completed teardown. It tells the mobility controller this subscriber's location binding and registration context should be canceled. Start the coordinated cleanup. You can now see why the first message comes from the subscriber database side. The network decision begins there. Everything else in the diagram is the system reacting to that decision. The MME receives the cancel location request and becomes the conductor of the teardown. Its next job is personal. The device itself must be told. So the MME sends a detach request toward the UE. In the route metaphor, the central controller tells the traveler, leave the network path, your session is ending. This is not the same message as cancel location. Cancel location was core to core authority speaking to mobility. Detach request is mobility speaking to the handset. Until the device is informed, radio and non access resources on the user side can still behave as if the session is valid. So the procedure deliberately reaches the edge before it finishes cleaning the middle. The traveler answers. The UE returns detach accept. That confirmation matters. Distributed teardown without acknowledgments is how you get split brain. One side thinks the session is gone, the other keeps timers and buffers alive. Detach accept tells the MME the device has processed the detach instruction. But here is the insight students often miss. An accepted device detach is only one portion of the procedure. The core still holds packet session state, bearer contexts, and control tunnels. Telling the phone to leave does not, by itself, erase every data plane context in the gateways. The route still has interior rooms to lock. Here is a trap almost everyone falls into the first time they read a detached diagram. They see detach accept and think the story is over. The user is gone. But accept only means the UE processed the instruction. The MME may still have EPS bearer contexts. Gateways may still hold GTP tunnels and charging bases. Policy may still think a PCAN session is alive. So treat detach accept like checking a coat at the door while the lights are still on upstairs. The traveler has agreed to leave. The building still has to turn off rooms, revoke badges, and update the guest book. In protocol terms, user signaling complete is not the same as resource release complete. Hold that distinction. The next arrows exist because of it. So the MME turns inward to the data path. It issues delete session request toward the session endpoints that hold the packet core context, the gateways behind those S1 and S5 legs. Watch the pairing. A delete session request expects a delete session response. Request and response are how the control plane proves the data path really released resources, not merely that someone asked. You can now see the difference between telling the device to detach and actually releasing the path that carried its data. One is a user equipment conversation. The other is core session deletion. Both appear in the same procedure because a live mobile session is both a registration story and a bearer story. As those delete exchanges complete, the diagram's active lines transform into released states. Labels you would read at the bottom of the swim lane chart say things like ESS1 bearer released, ESS5 bearer released, and FMC connection released. Those are not decorative banners. They are the end state of resources that used to carry user packets and control associations. GTP control connections that manage the tunnels are torn down with the sessions they controlled. Visually, think of bright pipes going dim. First, the device was told, then the pipes themselves were dismantled. If you only detached the UE and skipped delete session, you could strand gateway state, capacity tied up for a user who is already gone. That is why the procedure sequences device signaling and session deletion as distinct steps. Does order matter? Deeply. Suppose you deleted sessions first and never told the UE. The phone might keep trying to use radio bearers that the core already destroyed. Retries, errors, a confused radio stack. Suppose you answered the HSS before cleanup finished. The home database might believe cancellation succeeded while gateways still bill or buffer. The diagram's vertical order is a dependency graph drawn as time. Inform the edge, free the pipes, close the authority loop, then scrub policy. Or run those cleanups as soon as each dependency allows. But never pretend a later box is optional decoration. When you study any procedure chart, ask, if I swap two arrows, what lie does some node believe? That question turns a memorized sequence into an engineered one. Remember who started this. The HSS is still waiting for closure on the cancel it sent. After the MME has driven the detach and session cleanup it is responsible for, it returns a cancel location answer toward the HSS. That answer closes the authority loop. The home subscriber system learns that the cancellation it requested has been handled in the visited or serving mobility node. Without that answer, the HSS might retain uncertainty about whether location cancellation succeeded. With it, subscriber data and network registration views can converge. Notice the symmetry. Cancel location request opened the procedure. Cancel location answer reports completion back to the initiator, even while other lanes may still be finishing policy work. There is still another layer of the route, policy. Bearers carry packets. Policy decides what those packets were allowed to do. Quality of service, charging correlates, rules bound to the session. So the procedure continues with an indication of PCAN session termination toward the policy side, involving the PCRF and an acknowledgement of that PCAN session termination. Then remove PCC rule interactions, clean the policy rules associated with the session, with the SPR in the picture where subscription policy lives. Why bother if the bearer is already gone? Because removing the data path without removing policy state can leave stale rules, ghosts that confuse the next attach, or misapply controls. Teardown is not finished when the pipe is empty. It is finished when the rules that govern the pipe are gone too. Stack the layers once more as a single metaphor you can reuse. Identity and cancellation live at the HSS. Reachability and orchestration live at the MME. The UE is the human facing edge. Bearers and GTP control are the moving van for packets. PCRF and SPR are the rulebook and the subscription shelf for that van's permissions. HSS initiated detach is what happens when the identity layer says stop, and every other layer must concur by deleting its local facts. Indication of PCAN session termination and remove PCC rule are not afterthoughts, they are the rulebook closing. If you only remember one sentence from the policy stretch, make it this: a released bearer with a living rule is still a bug waiting for the next attach. Look at the bottom of the procedure as a transformation of the top, not a separate story. At the start, ESS 1 and ESS 5 bearers were active. GTP control connections stood. Registration and connection states said the user was in. At the end, those same structures read released, and node states flipped to post-detach reality. Network registration and connection status updated so the system will not pretend the old session still exists. That before and after is the whole point of drawing a swim lane instead of a bullet list. You see active context become released context because each message earned that change. Walk a concrete story end to end. A roaming subscriber's account is suspended at home. The HSS issues cancel location request to the serving MME in the visited network. The MME sends detach request. The phone shows the session ending and returns detach accept. Delete session clears S1 and S5 related contexts so the visited gateways stop carrying and charging that user. Cancel location answer tells home the serving side complied. Policy teardown drops PCC rules so a stale quality of service profile cannot resurrect itself on a fluke reattach. At the bottom of the chart, the released banners are the visited network's proof it no longer owes that subscriber a path. Same arrows you already know, now glued to a person, a roam, and a business reason. That is how the abstract swim lane becomes operational sense. Let us walk the full chain once, in order without skipping lanes. 1. The HSS initiates with cancel location request to the MME. 2. The MME sends detach request to the UE. 3. The UE confirms with detach accept. 4. The MME deletes packet core sessions with delete session request and collects delete session response. 5. The MME returns cancel location answer to the HSS. 6. Policy cleans up through indication of PCAN session termination, its acknowledgement, and remove PCC rule until bearers and connections show released. One logical action: detach this subscriber because the home system said so, becomes several coordinated announcements, confirmations, and cleanups across independently responsible components. Zoom out. What you learned is larger than one telecom diagram. This is distributed system teardown. A single human level intention, end the session, is unsafe if only one component acts. Each lane owns different truth, identity, and cancellation at the HSS, mobility and orchestration at the MME, radio reality at the UE, data plane resources at the gateways, authorization residue at PCRF and SPR. The procedure is a protocol for making those truths agree again by emptying them in a deliberate order. You can now see detach not as a button, but as a consensus to forget. One open question in the same style of reasoning. What other network action, a handover that fails midway, a reattach after crash, a purge after long inactivity, would require the same careful chain of announcements, confirmations, and cleanup? When you spot the next swim lane, ask who starts it, who must acknowledge, and what state is left if any arrow is dropped.